Hi everyone, welcome to another of our daily devotions. We're going to move on this morning to Psalm number 10. One of the things that you learn if you've got children who are toddlers, or maybe grandchildren who are at that age, or maybe you've got nephews and nieces and they're around 2 to 4 year old, they always want to ask questions, and you have to be prepared to give answers. Sometimes the questions are very strange, sometimes they're very difficult to answer, and usually the toddler's question begins with the word why. So I'll say to my granddaughter Eden, "Come on, Eden, it's time to brush your teeth." "Why, Granda?" "Because we brush our teeth at bedtime." "But why?" "Well, so that we can have good, healthy teeth." "Why?" "So that we are able to eat our food properly with our teeth." But why?" "Never mind, come on and get your teeth brushed." Toddlers use the why question to try to figure out, to try to get information about things in the world or things in life that they don't fully understand yet. They want to explore these things, and they want to explore these things with you because they believe you can give them reasons, you can give them answers. Now in Psalm 10, the psalmist asks the question, why? And in actual fact, he asks it twice in quick succession. Look at verse 1. "Why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble?" The psalmist comes to God and asks the why question. Why does he ask the why question? Well, in our previous psalm, the psalmist was encouraging himself with thoughts of how God had acted and intervened on his behalf in accordance with God's own character to overthrow the psalmist's enemies and to uphold justice and righteousness in the circumstances that David was facing. In this psalm, Psalm 10, the psalmist hasn't seen God doing that yet. He hasn't been acting, it seems to the psalmist, in justice and righteousness. In fact, it seems to the psalmist that God is failing to do what he ought to be doing. It seems to the psalmist that God is indifferent to the obvious injustice and suffering that the psalmist is describing here in these verses. He describes how the wicked is totally dismissive of God and how he oppresses the innocent, even going so far as to murder the innocent for personal gain. You see that in verse 8. He says of the wicked, he sits in ambush in the villages, in hiding places, he murders the innocent. So the psalmist is speaking here about how the righteous are being oppressed by the wicked, and all for the wicked's personal gain. He is attacking the lowly, he's attacking the poor. And the thing is, he does it believing God won't do a thing about it, or that God can't do anything about it. In verses 2 to 5 of this psalm, we read this: "In arrogance, the wicked hotly pursue the poor. The wicked boasts of the desires of his soul, and the greedy one for gain curses and renounces the Lord. In the pride of his face, the wicked does not seek God. All his thoughts are, there is no God. His ways prosper at all times." See what's happening. He says in his heart, "I shall not be moved. Throughout all generations, I shall not meet adversity." He goes on in verse 9, "He lurks in ambush like a lion in his thicket. He lurks that he may seize the poor. He seizes the poor when he draws them into his net. The helpless are crushed and sink down and fall by his might. And he," that is the wicked, "says in his heart, God has forgotten. He has hidden his face. He will never see it. And the psalmist is asking the question, why? Now, in asking that question, the fact is the psalmist, even in that expressing of the question why, is actually expressing faith in God. And you might say, well, how do you get that out of that, Robert? Well, the psalmist knows that this is not how things should be. What he's seeing happening is not the way God normally works. There is something wrong here, and the psalmist doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand why God doesn't act against the wicked oppressor. It is a statement of frustration, but a frustration that is born out of faith in a God of truth, of justice, of righteousness. You see, sometimes in the Christian life, we face circumstances that we don't understand, and things happen to us or maybe to those that we love that are difficult, hard, troublesome, distressing. And we have to say, we don't know why, we can't figure it out. The circumstances seem wrong, that they're out of keeping with what we know of God and what we expect of God, how He will act in our circumstances. It's not wrong to ask the question, why? There's nothing wrong with wanting to know what's going on. Our very why actually speaks volumes regarding our knowledge of who God is, and because of who He is, how we expect Him normally to act. Our very question, why, is in fact an expression of our faith and belief in the God of the Bible. You'll notice that whilst the psalmist was perplexed about what was happening around him, he nevertheless continues to plead with God to act. Dale Ralph Davis makes a very valid comment. He says the psalmist does not use God's baffling him as an excuse for disengaging with God, but rather as an incentive to press on with God. In other words, just because he didn't understand what God was doing, that was no reason to abandon faith in God. No reason to stop praying that God would act according to His character. God's ways sometimes are not our ways, neither His thoughts our thoughts. And sometimes God's ways are hidden from us. And because they're hidden and unknown to us, we ask why. Brethren, let us, in God's hidden dealings with us, continue to trust Him, but also continue to go to Him and to inquire of Him and to plead with Him to act on our behalf. Why, says the psalmist, are you so far away? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? He's going to plead with God, and it's all born out of the fact that he knows who God is and he trusts this God. May these thoughts be a blessing to you as you go into the circumstances of today. Every blessing.